Hey everyone, it's Nikki. Welcome back. Today is day 12 of the 12 days of Christmas, and I have a beautiful DIY waiting for you at the end. This is hosted by Brenda from Rustic and Lace and Jackie from Crafting and Mimi's World. We are doing Christmas bells today. I found this beautiful bell while thrifting. Actually, I found two of them, and I'm priming this one with Paint Couture's 2-in-1 Premium Primer in the color gray, and off camera I painted it the color Farmhouse Linen, also by Paint Couture. Then I found this vintage rice paper on Etsy. I adhered it with some liquid patina to seal it in and protect it. Then I took my clear mold, dusted it lightly with some cornstarch that just helps the clay release. I'm using Das air dried clay, pressing it in with my thumbs, flattening out a little bit. Once I'm happy with it, I flex my mold and roll it back to release my casting. Then I'm adding some Titebond Quick and Thick to the back to adhere it to my bell. And because my bell is so rounded, this part is tricky. My casting kept sliding around while I tried to position it, and I'm having to wipe away that extra glue. This definitely took some patience, but once I found a way to actually prop it up, it made this so much easier to work with. I am using Titebond Quick and Thick for this. This is a bit of a lengthy project, but it is also a lot of fun. So I'm going to speed up through most of this as a lot of it is repetitive. But next I'm using my Enlighting etchings mold and repeating the same process, pressing the clay into that micro rim, flattening it, flexing the mold, and then rolling it back to release my casting. I placed this one along the top of my bell. I was also going to do a partial casting, but then I decided to wait until I found placement for this before separating both of the side pieces. This is going on what I'm calling the front of my bell, and I really want it to have an old look, but also very much a statement piece. Then I took out another mold. I think this is called Oh Christmas Tree, and I started casting the greenery from it. You'll see in a second I separate those pieces as well, but I do end up using all the ones that I did separate. And if you've never worked with clay before, Amazon actually has some really affordable molds that you could start with and see if it's something that you enjoy. I find it relaxing, though I'll admit this bell was definitely a bit of a challenge just because of the shape. And here you see I'm using one of those smaller pieces that I separated and attaching it along what would be the sides. It's kind of funny calling them the sides because this is a round piece, but just make sure to wipe away any excess glue. I mean, we're going to go behind it with some glaze, so you wouldn't really see it anyway. But it is nice to keep it tidy. Now I'm casting this medium-sized tree, and I'm going to let you watch a lot of this as it's repetitive, but this side of the bell is going to look like a little forest full of greenery, and it's just going to be so pretty. I can't wait for you to see the finished result. I'm then going to cast a star from this mold, and I'm going to place it right at the top of my tree. And I think that just finishes off that empty section nicely. I'm going to start casting some of these little bows and add them right where the pieces meet. You could certainly use resin for this, but I really love working with clay. And it's moldable. It conforms beautifully to whatever surface that you're working on. I'm not worried about breakage because with the clay you can easily fix it. Now this is a Christmas bell, so the greenery and the bows all tie in really nicely for the theme. And the little leftover pieces of greenery, I'm going to lay those on each side of my tree. I'm dusting off any leftover cornstarch from my molds. That way everything's all nice and clean before I go in with my paint. And I'm going to use the color Buttercream instead of the Farmhouse Linen. I actually ran out of that, but this one's nice and I love that creamy tone that fits beautifully with the overall look that I'm going for. I had given this a few hours, that way it would form a crust before going in with my paint. But I'm just dabbling and stippling as I go and just using my inner Erin from the provincial farmhouse as I'm creating this bell. She really does a good job describing what she's doing. I mean, it is hard. There's a lot of detail that goes into this. Next, I'm going in with Crackle Step 1, and I'm being careful not to go over my castings, but putting a nice layer all around my bell. And then once that was dry, I gave it about 30 minutes. I go in with Crackle Step 2. And one thing I have learned with Crackle Step 2 is that you don't want to just keep going over and over the crackle. You just want to put a layer and not just keep messing with it, because it doesn't give a nice crackle when you do that. And I let that dry for about 30 minutes, and then I'm going to go in with Paint Couture's bronze metallic paint. I'm going to go all around my bell and just stippling and wiping back as I go. And because the crackle's there, I can wipe back as much as I want, but I really want it to go into those cracks and give it that nice old look. And you could skip this step altogether. I just love things to look old. I love vintage, but this would look nice if you left it as is, sealed it in, and just painted your castings maybe. Another thing that you could use instead of the metallic paints is maybe some Dixie dirt. Just use whatever you have on hand. Then I took out light brown sugar glaze and just went over my castings with this. I'm going to start here and then I'll move back to my bronze metallic paint. And this is just getting into all the low points, and I'm pulling back as much as I want. I'm painting over my castings next, starting with the trees. I'm using the color Eden by DIY Paint and applying it with that same stippling method. And it really does help give a lot of texture and a bit more life. And the reason why I go in with the glaze is it settles into those low points, bringing out, the details and adding beautiful dimension. When you layer different tones like that, the soft green of the paint against the depth of the glaze, it really gives that piece more character and it makes it feel a little more aged and natural. I'm continuing with that same color, brushing it all over the leaves along the bottom. There are a few little flowers down there too, so I'm just blending it all in together before bringing that color up to the top where that greenery wraps around. And we're going to paint those little flowers down there. Again, I keep catching myself saying sides, but the bell doesn't have any actual sides. It's all curves. I'm trying to stop myself, but it's going to happen. So just roll with me, okay? As I'm working and coloring in this greenery, I'm wiping some of the paint back with a baby wipe. That brings out those high points and adds a really pretty variation in the tone. It gives the piece more depth and makes the texture stand out without losing that soft, natural look that the color Eden is really giving this greenery. And as you can see, I'm not worried about the sides right now. My glaze is going to go down into the sides, and then later on I'm going to go back in with the same color and just do some touch-ups. But for the bottom of my tree, I went in with the color Pine Cone, and that's also by Paint Couture. And then this color is Ballet Slipper by Waverly, and I'm going to paint all my pretty bows this color and also the florals. I have to apologize, guys. I am trying to get used to this new craft drum and the lighting. So this part is really hard to see, and I tried to use a filter to see if I could, try to balance it out a little bit. But that didn't seem to work so well. It really brought the green forward. But right now I'm using bronze metallic paint and painting over all those large castings. And even though we went over it with the brown sugar glaze, again, that went down into the low points. And this bronze metallic paint is going all over the high points. I'm going to go in with a small artist brush and just touch up some of the greenery and along the sides. You're going to see me going back and forth quite a bit between colors and paintbrushes. If you're still with me through this, guys, I really hope that you're enjoying this as much as I did making it for you. And if you are, go ahead and hit that like button. You know what to do. I don't have to tell you these things, but I'd love to hear what you think of this one. Would you try something like this yourself, or is it a little bit over the top for your taste? I know it takes a lot of time and patience. There's plenty of time waiting for paint to dry, but I honestly love projects like this. I can just tune everything out and get lost in the process and create for hours. I'm using some Rub and Buff on my star. It's a little deeper shade than the bronze metallic paint. Now back to the front, there's almost like a little crest on the front, and I'm adding tiny diamonds all the way around it. And I'm sorry, you really can't see them well on camera right now, but you'll be able to see them in the final photos, I promise. This little kit came with what feels like 7,000 little tiny gems, along with a tool that makes picking them up so easy. It really makes the process a breeze. I had this little bow that's been sitting in my stash that I had cast in resin, and this is out of my bows mold. I may not have that right, but I'm using that same adhesive to place this right onto the front there, right under my little girl and boy there that I decoupaged on the front. And if you heat that up, you can do whatever you want with it. You could bend it in half if you wanted to. So that's a little trick if you haven't worked with um, resin before. And then I'm going over everything with some Extreme Guard Satin by Paint Couture. Now I'm going to add on some berries, and this is the color Marquee by DIY. And I do go over these again a little bit later on. You'll see they just weren't quite bright enough for my taste. And of course, I'm going to bring that to the top around this greenery as well. I got my hand in it, and you can see how easily that wipes back because of the glaze. And I gave that a minute to dry and continue around placing berries here and there. And I did go back to that. And then I'm taking, this is by Pentart. This is like a snow crystal glaze. And I also have two others. I started with this one, and you'll see that I do go back later on. I'm bringing in that same red and just coloring in the center of this little crest. It ties in nicely with the berries, and there's a hint of burgundy in the paper that complements it beautifully. You'll notice here in a second two tiny bells that I cast, and I'm just going to go over them with some Extreme Guard satin. And now I'm going to bring in Van Dyke Brown. It's another metallic paint, and I know we've already used brown sugar glaze, but some of those low points started to get a little lost, and I really wanted to bring that depth back in. And this color adds just the right amount of tonal difference, these soft shadows that make the details feel more dimensional instead of flat. It's a subtle change, but it gives the piece so much more character and warmth in the final result. And I'm going to go over, all the trees and everything, and I'm sure you're seeing by now how this improves my project so much. I'm painting my bells the color pewter, and that is by Lumineer, and I'm just using a small artist brush to get into all those fine details. And again, wiping it back a little bit with a baby wipe. And I'm taking out the color Verde Green and going over the greenery with this because I didn't want the greenery to kind of get lost in the greenery that I already have around the sides. I wanted that to stand out a little more and not look just like one continuous piece, if I'm making sense. And for the little bows, I'm using that same ballet slipper color. It's such a soft, delicate piece. I really love how sweet this just adds to this piece. And honestly, guys, I am in love with this. I can't even begin to tell you how much I adore how this all came together. I'm bringing that same red in to the band around the bells. You'll see here in a second. And this is where I go over my berries one more time. And this, I'm glad I did this because they really start to stand out here. Then I'm going to grab my snow pen. Actually, this one is my crystal pen. I go over everything and then I go over everything again with my snow pen. With the trees dusted in snow and the children playing outside, this piece just captures that cozy, heartwarming feeling of the holidays, the kind that makes you want to just slow down, smile, and take it all in. Christmas has always been my favorite holiday, and I'm not mad about crafting for it because, I love it, and there's just so much you can do with crafting for the holidays. As you can see, I'm continuing with more snow. This is going to be hanging in one of my doorways, and it is going to be such an eye catcher, such a showstopper, and it's just snowy and whimsy and all the things that I love. And that brings us to the end of day 12, the final of our 12 days of Christmas. I truly hope that this last project felt like a fitting way to wrap up our series and that you enjoyed each of these creations that I have made this week, or should I say this past 12 days. Thank you so much for spending time with me today and for being a part of this whole journey. To each and every one of you that has subscribed, left a comment, or been here since the very beginning, I can't tell you how much your support means to me. I'm still working towards my goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers, so if you haven't already, I'd be so grateful if you subscribed and joined my little creative family. From my home to yours, I wish you a warm, peaceful, and joy-filled Christmas season. Until the next one, bye.